The air in the house was thick with the unspoken, a familiar tension that always seemed to arrive in Beatrice's luggage. My mother-in-law had a way of making her presence felt, not through loud declarations, but through a quiet, simmering disapproval that could chill a room faster than an open window in winter. This time, the occasion was a grand family vacation to Italy, a trip James's parents had generously decided to gift us for their 40th wedding anniversary. A proper family holiday, Beatrice had called it, her eyes sweeping over me in a way that subtly suggested I was the improper element. James, my husband, was blissfully unaware, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of the undercurrents. He saw only his mother's generosity, the grand gesture of flying us all to Tuscany for 2 weeks. He was a good man, with a heart as open as the sky, but he had a blind spot the size of a continent when it came to his mother. To him, her barbs were benign pleasantries, her critiques were helpful suggestions, and her suffocating control was just her way of showing love. "That's just how she is, Ames," he'd say with an easy shrug, planting a kiss on my forehead. "She means well." I wasn't so sure. For the 5 years we'd been married, Beatrice had treated me like a temporary exhibit in her son's life, a curious detour he had taken that would eventually lead back to the main road she had paved for him. She would compliment my cooking by saying, "It's amazing what you can do with such simple ingredients, Amelia," leaving the unspoken implication hanging in the air that I came from a world of simplicity, unlike her own. She would admire my clothes with a tight smile and the comment, "That's a very creative outfit," her tone turning the word creative into a synonym for inappropriate. The planning of the Italy trip was a masterclass in her subtle warfare. Every decision was made in a flurry of phone calls between Beatrice and James, from which I was conveniently excluded. The itinerary was set, the hotels booked, the dinner reservations made. I was presented with the final plan as if it were a royal decree. My only role was to pack my bags and be grateful. When I tried to suggest a small detour to Florence, a city I had dreamed of visiting since I was a girl, Beatrice had smiled indulgently. "Oh, that's a sweet idea, dear," she'd said, patting my hand. "But the schedule is quite tight. We have to be practical. Perhaps you and James can do that on your own time another year." The message was clear. My dreams were an inconvenience to her perfectly orchestrated family experience. The morning of our departure was chaos, but a controlled chaos orchestrated by Beatrice. She moved through the house like a general commanding her troops, issuing orders and inspecting bags. My father-in-law, a quiet man who had long ago surrendered to her will, simply ferried luggage to the waiting car. James was trying to locate his passport, and I was doing a final check of our apartment, making sure everything was unplugged. "Amelia, are you ready?" Beatrice called from the doorway, her voice sharp with impatience. "The taxi is here. We can't be late." "Just coming," I called back, grabbing my handbag. As I walked into the living room, she gave me a swift, critical once-over. Her eyes lingered on my carry-on bag. "Is that all you're bringing on the plane? I hope you have enough. The flight is long." "I have everything I need," I said, forcing a smile. Her own luggage was a set of immaculate, cream-colored suitcases, each one perfectly matching. Mine was a sturdy, if slightly worn, navy blue set that had seen me through countless adventures before I met James. It was another small, visible reminder of the different worlds we came from. At the airport, the tension escalated. Beatrice seemed to thrive in the sterile, bustling environment of the terminal. She navigated the check-in process with an efficiency that was both impressive and intimidating. She handed a stack of passports to the airline agent, all except mine. "We are checking in for the flight to Rome," she announced, her voice resonating with authority. "The 3 of us." I stood beside James, my passport in my hand, feeling a familiar prickle of unease. James, busy on his phone trying to confirm the car rental in Tuscany, didn't seem to notice. The agent, a polite young woman, smiled at Beatrice. "Of course." "And for the 4th passenger?" she asked, her eyes flicking towards me. Beatrice didn't even glance in my direction. Her voice was firm, carrying a tone of finality that sent a chill down my spine. "No," she said, her smile never faltering. "She's not coming with us." The agent's words hung in the air, a stark contradiction to the reality Beatrice had tried to create. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. The hum of the airport, the distant calls for boarding flights, the rattle of suitcases, it all faded into a dull roar. My mind replayed her words. "She's not coming with us." It wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration. James finally looked up from his phone, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What? What are you talking about, Mom?" He stepped closer, putting a hand on my arm as if to physically tether me to them. "Of course she's coming with us. We're all going to Italy together." Beatrice waved a dismissive hand, her composure flawless. James, don't be dramatic. It was a simple booking issue. Amelia's ticket is separate. I was just about to handle it. Her explanation was smooth, practiced, designed to make me feel like an overreacting child. But the coldness in her eyes betrayed her. She had intended for this to be a moment of public humiliation, a clear demarcation of my status as an outsider. I felt a familiar wave of heat rise to my cheeks, the sting of shame and anger. But this time, something was different. Years of swallowing my pride, of accepting the subtle cuts and coded insults, had created a dam inside me, and it was about to break. Ignoring Beatrice, I stepped forward and placed my passport on the counter. My hand was steady. My voice, when I spoke, was clearer than I expected. "My name is Amelia Sterling," I said to the agent. "There should be a reservation for me." The agent, a young woman with kind eyes, gave me a reassuring smile and began typing. The silence stretched, thick with Beatrice's indignation. I could feel her stare on the side of my face. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Sterling," the agent said, her eyebrows lifting in surprise. She looked from her screen to me, then to Beatrice, a flicker of understanding in her expression. "I see your reservation. It appears your ticket was booked on a different confirmation. That's correct." Beatrice gave a tight, triumphant nod. "You see? A simple misunderstanding, it's all sorted." She began to turn away, as if the matter was closed. But the agent wasn't finished. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping into a more confidential tone, yet it was loud enough for all of us to hear. "And I have your seat assignment here, Mrs. Sterling." She paused, and the world seemed to hold its breath. "You are in seat 1A, first class." Silence. A profound, echoing silence. James's jaw literally dropped. He looked from the agent to me, and then to his mother, whose perfectly made-up face had become a mask of disbelief. "First class?" Beatrice repeated, the words sounding foreign on her tongue. "That's impossible. There must be a mistake. Our tickets," she gestured between herself, her husband, and James, "are in premium economy." The way she said "our" was a blade, meant to carve me out one last time. "There's no mistake, ma'am," the agent said, her professional smile unwavering. "The ticket for Amelia Sterling is confirmed for first class. It was booked several months ago." My mind raced. First class? I couldn't afford that. James wouldn't have booked it without telling me. And then, a memory surfaced, soft and warm. A phone call with my own mother a few months back. I had been telling her about the trip, about how I felt like a tag-along, and how I wished I could contribute something to feel like less of a freeloader. My mom, a retired teacher who lived a simple life, had listened patiently. "Everyone deserves to feel special, honey," she had said. "Let me look into my old travel points. Maybe I can give you a little boost." I had thanked her but thought nothing of it, knowing her resources were limited. It was her. My mother had used every last travel point she had saved over a lifetime to give me this. It wasn't just a seat on a plane. It was a gesture of love, a shield of dignity. A surge of strength, potent and unfamiliar, washed over me. The shame vanished, replaced by a quiet, unshakable resolve. I looked from James's stunned face to Beatrice's crumbling facade. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The agent slid the golden-edged boarding pass across the counter towards me. It felt heavier than a simple piece of paper. It felt like a verdict. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the bold lettering, "First class." I turned to face my husband and his mother. "Well," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It seems my travel plans are in order." I met Beatrice's furious gaze without flinching. "I'll see you in Rome." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked towards the security gate, my back straight, my head held high. For the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Walking away from them was like stepping out of a shadow and into the sun. The weight of Beatrice's judgment, a burden I had carried for so long I'd almost forgotten it was there, seemed to dissolve with every step. The golden ticket in my hand wasn't just a pass to a more comfortable seat. It was permission to value myself. The first-class security line was short, the agents courteous. The entire experience was seamless, designed to make one feel welcome and unburdened. As I placed my carry-on on the belt, I couldn't help but glance back at the chaotic snake of the main security line. I caught a glimpse of Beatrice, her face a thundercloud, jabbing a finger in James's direction as he spoke on his phone, likely trying to understand what had just happened. My father-in-law stood beside them, looking lost and weary, as if the drama had already exhausted him. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for James, caught in the crossfire. But it was quickly replaced by a new, harder emotion, disappointment. He had stood by for years, a passive spectator to my slow, emotional erosion. His comfort had always been prioritized over my peace. Once through security, I found the first-class lounge. The entrance was discreet, a quiet haven away from the terminal's frantic energy. Inside, it was a world of hushed tones, plush armchairs, and complimentary champagne. I found a secluded corner overlooking the tarmac and finally allowed myself to breathe. I took out my phone and sent a simple text to my mom. "You have no idea what you've just done. Thank you. I love you." Her reply came almost instantly. "Everyone deserves a little magic, honey. Enjoy your flight. You've earned it." Tears welled in my eyes. It wasn't about the luxury. It was about being seen. It was about being loved in a way that was unconditional and empowering. When it was time to board, I was one of the first on the plane, greeted by name by a flight attendant who offered to hang my coat. My seat, 1A, was more like a small private pod. There was a shocking amount of legroom, a large personal screen, and a little amenity kit filled with designer lotions and a silk eye mask. I settled into the buttery leather seat and accepted a glass of champagne before we even took off. As the rest of the passengers began to file in, I watched them from my cocoon of privilege. I saw James and his parents walk past. My father-in-law gave me a brief, unreadable look. James wouldn't meet my eye, his face a mixture of embarrassment and frustration. And Beatrice? Beatrice stared directly at me. Her eyes were chips of ice. The look she gave me wasn't just angry, it was venomous. It was the look of a queen whose authority had been publicly challenged and found wanting. She said nothing, but the silent message was deafening. "This changes nothing. You will pay for this." I simply raised my champagne glass in a silent, defiant toast and turned my attention to the window. The flight was a revelation. While they were squeezed into their premium economy seats, I was dining on a 3-course meal served on actual china. I watched a movie on a screen twice the size of theirs. When I grew tired, a flight attendant converted my seat into a fully flat bed with a duvet and a pillow. I slept for several hours, a deep and peaceful sleep I hadn't had in years, high above the clouds, flying towards a future I suddenly felt I had some control over. I woke up as the captain announced our initial descent into Rome. I felt rested, calm, and incredibly powerful. The small act of my mother's love had recalibrated my entire sense of self. I had spent 5 years trying to shrink myself to fit into the tiny, suffocating box Beatrice had designed for me. I had tried to be smaller, quieter, less me, in the hopes of being accepted. Lying there in that bed in the sky, I realized I was done shrinking. As we landed at Fiumicino Airport, I gathered my things, feeling a sense of preparedness I had never felt before in their company. I knew a confrontation was inevitable. The battle at the check-in counter was just the first skirmish. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I had found my footing on ground of my own making. When the doors opened, I was the first to disembark, stepping out into the warm Italian air, ready for whatever came next. I walked through the jet bridge alone, not with the anxiety of being an outcast, but with the quiet confidence of a woman who was finally and irrevocably on her own path. The baggage claim at Fiumicino was a stark contrast to the serenity of the first-class lounge. It was a chaotic symphony of rumbling carousels, crying children, and anxious travelers scanning for their luggage. I found the right belt and stood back, content to wait. I was no longer in a hurry. I was operating on my own time. It was about 20 minutes before they appeared. James was pushing a trolley, his father trailing behind, while Beatrice walked slightly ahead of them both, her posture rigid. She spotted me immediately, and her pace didn't slow. She marched right up to me, her voice a low, controlled hiss that was more menacing than any shout. "I hope you enjoyed your little performance," she began, not even bothering with a greeting. It was quite a spectacle, deliberately trying to embarrass me in front of the entire airport. I had anticipated this. I had rehearsed a dozen angry replies in my head, but standing there, bathed in my newfound calm, I found I didn't need them. I simply looked at her, my expression placid. "It was a gift from my mother, Beatrice," I said, my voice even. "I didn't know about it until the agent told me. There was no performance." "Don't play coy with me," she snapped. "You think I don't know what this is? It's a power play. A vulgar display of something you are not." Before I could respond, James intervened, his voice weary. "Mom, please, can we not do this here? We just landed. Let's just get the bags and get to the villa." He looked at me, a pleading expression on his face. "Ames, let's just let it go." And there it was. The same old pattern. Smooth things over. appease his mother, ask me to be the one to absorb the blow, to let it go. The disappointment was a sharp physical pain. "Let what go, James?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I turned my body fully towards him, forcing him to meet my gaze. Beatrice was momentarily forgotten. The fact that your mother, in front of a stranger, declared I wasn't traveling with you? The fact that for 5 years I have been treated as a temporary inconvenience? Or the fact that when someone finally does something nice for me, something that makes me feel valued, your first instinct is to ask me to apologize for it to protect your mother's feelings? James flinched as if I'd slapped him. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I said, the truth of it solidifying between us. "You want me to let it go because it's easier than confronting the real problem." Our suitcases chose that moment to arrive, a row of navy blue and cream-colored soldiers appearing on the carousel. My father-in-law, who had been standing in stony silence, moved to pull them off. The spell was broken, but the crack in the foundation of our marriage remained. We collected the luggage in a tense silence. Beatrice, for once, seemed to have no words, though her fury radiated off her in waves. As we wheeled the bags towards the exit and the car rental desks, she seemed to recover her sense of command. "Right," she announced, as if nothing had happened. "James, you and your father come with me to the Hertz counter. The car is booked under my name. Amelia, you can wait here with the luggage." Another dismissal. Another attempt to put me in my place, to designate me as the baggage handler. I stopped walking. They continued for a few paces before realizing I wasn't with them. James turned back, an exasperated look on his face. "Amelia, what now?" I smiled, a genuine, liberating smile. "Actually, I think I have a better idea." I pointed to the Europe car desk on the other side of the hall. "You three go ahead and sort out your car. I'm going to rent one for myself." Beatrice actually scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. We have a car, a large one." "I know," I said cheerfully. "But you also have a very tight schedule, and I don't want to be an inconvenience." I used her own words, and I saw by the flicker in her eyes that she recognized them. "I've always wanted to see Florence, and since it's not on the main itinerary, this seems like the perfect opportunity. I'll drive up there for a day or two, and I'll meet you at the villa in Tuscany." "Don't worry," I added, my smile widening. "I'll be on my own time." James looked horrified. "You can't just leave. This is a family vacation." "Is it, James?" I asked him softly, but my question was a steel blade. Because from where I've been sitting, it has felt like anything but. Without waiting for another protest, I turned my trolley and began wheeling it towards the other rental counter. The act of physically separating myself, of choosing my own direction, was the most freeing thing I had ever done. I could hear Beatrice's sputtering rage behind me and James calling my name, but I didn't look back. I was renting my own car. I was driving to Florence. The rest of the vacation, and my life, would be on my own terms. Renting the car was surprisingly simple. Within 30 minutes, I was behind the wheel of a small but zippy Fiat, my luggage in the back, and the open road ahead of me. I rolled down the windows, letting the warm Italian air whip through my hair, and put on some music, turning the volume up loud. The feeling was intoxicating. It was more than just freedom. It was self-possession. The 2 days I spent in Florence were a dream. I wandered through the Uffizi Gallery, standing in silent awe before Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. I ate gelato by the Ponte Vecchio, not caring if it dripped onto my fingers. I climbed to the top of the Duomo and looked out over the sprawling red-tiled roofs of the city, feeling on top of the world. It was a pilgrimage to myself. I did everything on my own schedule, following my own whims. For the first time, I wasn't trying to anticipate anyone else's needs or desires. I was simply being. My phone buzzed incessantly for the first few hours. A series of texts from James, escalating from confusion to anger to pleading. "Amelia, where are you going? This is crazy. You're ruining the holiday. Mom is furious. Please, just come to the villa. I love you." That last one gave me pause. I didn't doubt that, in his own way, he loved me. But I was beginning to understand that love wasn't just a feeling. It was an action. It was standing up for someone. It was protecting their peace. It was choosing them, not just when it was easy, but when it was hard. I didn't answer his texts. I needed the silence. I needed the space to hear my own thoughts. Finally, on the evening of the second day, sitting in a small piazza with a glass of Chianti, I called him. He answered on the first ring. "Amelia, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm in Florence, James," I said calmly. "And I'm more than okay. I'm wonderful." He was silent for a moment. We were worried. I was worried. "Were you?" I asked, a genuine question. Or were you worried about how to manage your mother's anger? The sigh on the other end of the line was my answer. It hasn't been easy, he admitted. She's Beatrice. Yes, I said. She is. And I've spent the last 5 years trying to pretend that it doesn't affect me. I'm done doing that, James. I'm done being the buffer. I'm done being the one who has to let it go. From now on, things have to be different. I know, he said, and his voice sounded different. Subdued. Reflective. Seeing you walk away at the airport, and hearing you say all of that, it was a wake-up call. I've been letting you down. I see that now. I've been a coward. The admission hung in the air between us. It was the first time he had ever truly acknowledged his part in it. I'll be at the villa tomorrow afternoon, I told him. But James, I'm not coming back to the way things were. That version of our marriage is over. We either build a new one where we are a team, or we don't have one at all. The drive to the Tuscan villa the next day was different from my drive to Florence. I was no longer running away, I was driving towards a reckoning. When I pulled up the long, cypress-lined driveway, James was waiting for me outside. He looked tired but resolute. He walked to my car and simply said, I'm on your team. I'm sorry it took me so long. Beatrice was inside. She was sitting in the grand living room, a book in her lap that she wasn't reading. She watched me as I entered, her face an unreadable mask. So, you decided to join us, she said, her voice dripping with ice. James stepped in front of me before I could speak. Mom, that's enough. His voice was firm, a tone I had never heard him use with her before. Amelia is my wife. This is her family vacation as much as it is anyone's, and I will not allow her to be disrespected any longer. Not by you, not by anyone. We are a team, and if you can't accept that, then you are the one with the problem, not her. Beatrice stared at her son, speechless for the first time in her life. Her empire of control, built over decades, had crumbled with a few simple sentences. She looked from James to me, and in her eyes I saw not hatred, but a flicker of stunned disbelief, the shock of a monarch who has just been overthrown. She slowly closed her book, stood up, and walked out of the room without another word. The rest of the vacation was not magical. It was awkward and quiet. Beatrice was civil but distant, her power neutralized. But for James and me, it was the start of something new. We talked more than we had in years, honest and sometimes difficult conversations. We took walks through the olive groves, holding hands, rebuilding our foundation stone by stone. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a real one. My first class ticket, a simple gift of love from my mother, hadn't just flown me to Italy in style. It had flown me to a new life, one where I understood my own value and would never again accept a seat in the back of my own life.